This is our story. My name is Nick Ashall and my wife Sarah. In 2017, on the 14th of May, I embarked on a 5,000 kilometre journey across the United States. I've always had this burning desire to do something a little bit extraordinary and push my body to its mental and physical limits. And at the same time, I always wanted to raise awareness of a horrible disease of the lungs called pulmonary fibrosis. So on the 14th of May, I embarked on a huge adventure from the end of Santa Monica Pier in Los Angeles. And I ran through California, Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, Indiana, and halfway through Ohio. So I'd reached 3,947 kilometers. And then on day 82, running on US Highway 40 at about 8:15 in the morning, I was sadly hit at around 90 to 100 kilometers an hour by a pickup truck that didn't stop, so it was a hit and run accident. The savior, the person who saved my life, is the person next to me, my wife. At the time, 15 minutes before being hit, I was on a hands-free Skype call with her. She was in Cyprus with our two other daughters, who were having a holiday at the time. I was hit, thrown into a ditch that wasn't visible from other cars from the road, and I really had no idea of the scale of my injuries to my leg and pelvis and other internal injuries at the time. But because my wife has a medical background, she was able to, through her questioning, was able to keep me alive, and I was found 56 minutes later by state troopers and paramedics. And then I was flown by emergency helicopter to Ohio State University Hospital in Columbus, and Columbus became our home for the next 5 months.
Well, it all began for me, just as Nick was saying, 8:15 that morning. It was 4 in the afternoon for us, or 4:15, and it was a check-in. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Oh, I've run about 20K. And so we were chatting about meeting up in 3 weeks' time in New York. So the children and I were going to meet him when he arrived at Central Park. I could see he'd had a close call before. Earlier on in the run, in the first week, he held his phone when he spoke to me. And I got a big fright because a car got very close. And so we had an agreement from then on that he'd always wear it on his front pack. So I could see the jiggling of him running. Occasionally the phone would move, I'd see his face. And then suddenly it went silent, and like in the movies, I saw the grass rolling, and then I heard him yell. And so then went through the beginning of the questioning of what was going on, and I could hear from his laboured breathing and the noises he was making that it was pretty serious. So tried to get him to do a body scan, had fear that he was bleeding out, tried to get him to tie a tourniquet, offered lots of encouragement to keep breathing, and at the same time on another phone was calling my daughter, who was in the RV, who was still asleep, to wake up, and literally said, Nick's been hit by a car. You know, we need to get into action. And interestingly, we'd had some conversations about what we would do if that happened. So she got hold of the state troopers. We had 4 troopers out looking for him. We thought that at 20 kilometres, but he was actually at 16. So that's why it took so long. Well, really, in the scheme of things, it was 56 minutes. And they found him unconscious. The phone had cut out at 46 minutes for me, so it had suddenly gone dead, and that's when it got me, really, because I didn't know. Oh, sorry, microphone. I didn't know that he was alive or dead. So they airlifted him to Ohio. They wouldn't give me an update on his status, and within 3 hours I was on a plane on my way to America. I spoke to the surgeon. He was in surgery for 5.5 hours initially. They were just about stabilising him. His pelvis had to be stabilised from the outside. His leg had been put back together. He'd had a small subarachnoid hemorrhage into his left side of his brain, so they were watching that very carefully. And lots of blood transfusions, and so, yeah, 36 hours later I arrived in Ohio and began our adventure of being in America. So the first 10 or so weeks went by, interestingly, exceedingly fast, really. When I look back on it now, I lived in an RV in the staff car park while he was in ICU, and then, yeah, the staff at Ohio were incredible. He had multiple surgeries, suffered a very serious infection which put him back in ICU. So it was a very long, slow, I said fast, but really a long, slow process of putting him back together. He then, after 12 weeks, went into a rehabilitation centre where it was interesting. Do you want to talk about that? You thought you were going to get up and walk?
Yeah, I had this crazy expectation that by going into this rehabilitation centre, at the end of it, after 4 weeks, I would come out, not just walking, but I would come out running. And I was totally wrong. But I do remember taking the first steps, and you know, it was a very, very emotional time. I think I stood up for about 10, 11 seconds, and then was very, very eager to sit down again. It was a very, very strange feeling being up on my feet after a couple of months. We moved our entire family over to the United States of America. So Sarah did that. She shifted everybody over. So we needed to set up schooling for our children, and that was a extremely stressful time, as well as looking after me, setting up a new home, and setting up school for the kids. More surgeries, but over time I moved from a wheelchair to crutches, and then had final permission to fly back to the UAE in early January of 2018, and the surgeon there highly recommended that we make contact with some surgical expertise here in the form of Dr. Maher Abbas, who at the time we thought was at Cleveland Clinic, but to our surprise and happiness, we found that he was working at Zahra Hospital. So we made connection with him in early January, sat down with him and made a plan in terms of repairing essentially my bowel, which had been ruptured by fragments of bone from my pelvis injuries.
Can I pop in here?
Please.
I think one of the things that was fantastic was that we had been, up until this point, Nick's care had been very reactive. So it was like there was a complication, so we had to fix it. There was an issue, we had to fix it. And it was fabulous to finally sit with Dr. Maher, and he sat down, got a piece of paper, and it's like he drew us a mind map. And it suddenly made sense. It was the first time to me Nick's recovery made sense. We had finally had a realistic timeline. We knew what to expect. We knew the stages, the different surgeries that were needed. And I can remember we walked out of that meeting and we looked at each other and went, hey, yay, we see that there's an end to this, and it's a very positive one. I remember this going, it was just amazing, wasn't it? That we just felt so reassured.
Yeah, and that was the first time we had some understanding of that end point, as soon as we got back here and made contact with him. So I'm back on the bike with Sarah, doing a little bit of swimming as well, and back in the gym. So, I have this dream one day to I know it sounds crazy, but this dream one day to go back to the point where I was hit and finish the last 922 kilometres.
And shall we just go back a step and just talk about the care we've had here? I say you've had here. And it's been such a different feel to America. I think too because it's home, and this is where our support network is as well, and this is where the children go to school normally. And do you want to just speak some of how you found it being here?
Yeah, but as Sarah said, the support network here has been phenomenal. The customer service, the warmth, the trust, the empathy, the understanding at Zahra has been truly overwhelming. To the extent that there have been occasions where I've actually didn't want to leave the hospital because everything has been so good here. Yeah.
And I think over the months, we've built relationships with different people, even beginning with the valet guys at the car parking. They know me now, and it's really lovely, hi madam, how are you? And it's like they've become part of our journey as well. So starting at the valet guys, all the way through to the meeting, when we go and we check in with administration, all the way through to nursing staff. We've built some lovely relationships with the nurses, all the way through to Dr. Maher and his team. And it really is a family atmosphere, isn't it? It's felt really supportive.
I think Sarah summarised that really, really well. The health system in America needed to be reactive to save my life, but it's been lovely to move into an environment here in Dubai where the health thinking has been far more proactive, and we've finally reached an endpoint.
Well, we're not quite there yet. Do you see how optimistic he really is? We have a joke that I'm the realist in the relationship and he's the optimist, but more a realist than being negative. But so we still have a wee way to go. He's off back to see some of the doctors in America in November. So Dr. Maher, he was able to support Nick with his bowel repair. So it was really great because that was I think 7 surgeries all up by the time that the bowel has been repaired. But now we've still got, Nick's still got some bone issues that need to be looked at again, lymphatic, urological, so there's other things that we were told that this was going to be, it's not, see, he's so keen to run. We know that there's a little bit more to go.
So the first time I met Nick and his wife in my office, I was really very touched by all the events and the tragedy that had happened to him. And by many accounts, his injuries in past time would have been unsurvivable. The first thing I had to do as a surgeon, obviously, is to review all his record and determine what needed to be done for him from a surgical and medical standpoint to get him well. But more importantly is how can you heal and help someone who's been through so much emotionally, with so many surgeries being done, prolonged hospitalization, suffering, intensive care unit. So the first thing I really needed to do was to reinstill hope in his heart, in the heart of his wife, and a trust in me as a physician and also in the hospital, Zahra Hospital, that we were able to deliver the care for him that was needed to get him back to where he needed to be. So I devised for him a plan of what were the next step in terms of evaluation, and I told him from the onset that he was facing 3 additional operations in a period of approximately 8 months for me to get him to where he was at the time when I first met him to where he needed to be. In order to deliver on that plan, obviously, I needed to work with a team of other doctors, colleagues, urology colleagues, doctors from anesthesia as well, to try help managing him, and also an entire nursing team, both on the outpatient setting as well as the inpatient setting in the operating room, to really deliver his care. And that care really had to be seamless without any complication because he had gone through so much during the previous months in the United States. Now, fortunately, I took him through 3 operations, 3 successful operations that went according to schedule. And after the 2nd operation, we assessed all his healing and determined that he was ready for the last step, which we carried out also successfully. We were able to achieve that with very short hospital stay with no complication, fortunately. And that's really a testimonial to first, him overcoming all the tragedy and all the suffering, the support of his family, specifically his wife, and also support of an extensive team of people here at Al-Zahra, from the people who checked him in to the nurses who took care of him on the floor in the operating room and all the doctors who were involved with his care. I'm very pleased to see that he's now fully healed, fully recovered from the issue for which he came for us for help. And then now he can start planning the next phase of his journey.
It's really hard to put into words the gratitude that I have and Sarah and our wider family have for your expertise. Not just the medical expertise, but the goodwill and the empathy and the genuine care that you have really shown our family, and we are eternally grateful for everything that you have done. And one of the things that gave me so much joy, in addition to being repaired, was having that conversation with regard to your participation in the Olympic Games back in I understand the late 1980s, 1988
Yes.
in Seoul. So I felt, for me, that you could empathise from the perspective of a runner. And that was really, really important to me as part of my healing here. And thank you.
Thank you for saying that. It's always gratifying to see patients doing well, and it's really a testimonial to modern medicine in terms of what we can offer, and also modern healthcare facilities like Al-Zahra, where we're able to render the care as a team, because this is not an individual sport when it comes to delivering complex care. It's a team sport that really has to go seamless.
Yes.
From end to end to ensure that the patient does get what they need. But the biggest reward from a surgeon is to see at the end of the process that the patient is doing well. So I'm happy that you came to us. I'm happy that you involved me in your care, and I'm happy to see that you're doing so well.